Hello, this is Jared from Commit Quality. In this video, we're going to go over how to get the running test details using something called TestInfo. And all we have to do is input another parameter into our test function called TestInfo, and then we'll be able to use this inside our tests. So before we actually jump into it, what is TestInfo? Well, it basically contains information about your currently executing test. It's available to any test function like we put here. You can also use it in before each, after each hooks, and you can use it in test scoped fixtures. Now, TestInfo provides us the utility to control our test execution. So a few examples: you can attach files, you can update your test timeout, you can make your test fail, you can determine which is your currently running test, if it was retried, and a load more things. I'm just going to jump into a few examples to show you some quick wins of what we could do with TestInfo. So let's jump right into this. All I've done is I have my basic test and I've added this TestInfo parameter, which you just saw me add. And I'm going to the computer database website. I can put a link in the description so you can copy this as well. Probably the most basic thing we could do is we could output the title of our test. So let's say console.log, and I'm going to say TestInfo, which is the parameter we've just passed to our test function. And I'm going to say dot, and you can see already the amount of different things you can do with TestInfo. But if I type in title, this is going to give us the title of our test. So I'm going to save this, and then in my command line, I'm going to say npx playwright test, and I'm going to hit enter. And what you can see here is what we've output is the title of this test. So if I change this to subscribe and I execute this test, what we're going to see is subscribe is logged out. Now you might be thinking, oh, that might not be too useful for this. But what happens then if we want to combine this with maybe screenshotting functionality? So what if I say, when we go to this web page, I want to take a screenshot, but I want to title it the name of the test and something else? Well, we can do that. So let's say use test info title to name a screenshot. So let's do that then. If I say await page.screenshot, and I pass in here the path option, and we'll just say we don't have a folder, and then we'll get it created now. Screenshot / and then we want to pass through the testinfo.title. So I'll say testinfo.title, like we've done up the top. And then we'll end it with PNG because it's going to be a PNG format. Let's save that now, execute the test, and see what happens. So what we can see is the test has passed. It's still logged out the title because of the console.log, but if now we've got the screenshots folder, if I click into that and I open this, here we go. We've got a screenshot and we can see it's been named the test title. What we could do is say subscribe to Commit Quality. And maybe you don't want to have spaces in your file, because if I execute this now, we've got another screenshot here, which is subscribe to Commit Quality with all spaces. Then you could use some JavaScript magic to just say something like replace all spaces with, let's just say we want it to be underscores. If I run this now, we'll have another screenshot created, but it'll be the same as the title, but you'll have underscores. And of course, you can add extra things. You could say hard-coded value underscore, and then whatever the title is. So let's just rerun that again. And what you've got here is hard-coded value underscore subscribe to Commit Quality. You can also use it to do things like fail in a test. So let's just remove these. And I'm just going to say testinfo.fail. And I bet you can guess already what this is going to do. If we hover over it, it currently says, marks the currently running test as should fail. So this is the same as our annotations, and I'll put a link on the screen now into the video where I go over test annotations, but it's exactly the same. You're using the annotation here to say your test should fail, or if it isn't, mark it as it should have failed. So let's run the test now. We still have our console.log, remember, so you can output that. But now we've got a failure. Even though it's passed because there's no assertion or anything, you can see here, expected to fail, but the test passed. So it's another way you can use, TestInfo instead of having to go down the annotation route if you don't want to do that way. And there's one last thing I want to show you that I've found very useful when using TestInfo, and that's setting a timeout. So there's been a number of use cases where I personally had to increase or even decrease the test timeout, and it can become very messy if you start playing with just hard-coded values by saying set the timeout. So what I like to do is say testinfo.set timeout. And inside here, you can set a value. So let's just say 2. We'll say 2 seconds, 2000. Now, I don't like doing things direct like this because if I want to increase or decrease timeouts in tests, what could happen is I could have a bunch of these and I'm manually updating them each time if I want to increase or decrease the value. So what I like to do is get the testinfo timeout, which comes from the config. So I can say testinfo.timeout, and let's just hover over it. This is the timeout in milliseconds for the currently running test. 0 means no timeout. And what it says here is the test timeout is usually specified in the configuration file. So in my Playwright config, I've got a test timeout here of 20 seconds. Just for demo purposes, let's set this to 5 seconds because I don't want to be waiting for ages. Right now, this is taking that 5 seconds value from the config, and I can show you this by if I just, let's add a locator, and we'll just name it something crazy that doesn't exist on the page, and I'm going to say click. And what we'll see is this will fail, of course, and it'll wait that 5 seconds to try and click this locator, which of course doesn't exist. And it's failed with the test timeout of 5,000 milliseconds. But what if I said, okay, inside this test, I want to give it 7 seconds. Now, like I said, you could just change this to 7,000 and that would work completely fine. What I like to do is always base off my default test timeout, because if I ever increase it or decrease it, it'll directly impact everything for me, which is more than likely what I'm going to want to do. There's going to be use cases where you might not, but I like to do it this way. So I can then say plus 2000, which means it'll be a 7-second wait because you got the 5000 plus the 2000 milliseconds there. So let's just clear this and rerun the test. Of course, it's waiting that 7 seconds trying to click this locator that doesn't exist. If I scroll up now, you can see our test timeout is of 7 seconds. Now, this was just kind of a quick introduction to TestInfo and to show you the kind of tooling you have available to access things like your title, to make things a bit more dynamic, or use annotations inside the test this way, or like I say, if you want to increase the timeout of a test. The documentation is really rich in content and will show you a bunch of different things you can do with it. As always though, if you do see something and you'd like a video made about it, I'm more than happy to add more videos on this. In the future, I may even find certain things that I'd want to cover, which is a bit more in-depth of the TestInfo stuff. A like and subscribe is always appreciated. Thanks for watching and have a good day.